Fresh off a record-setting 23rd major title, Novak Djokovic enters the 2023 Wimbledon Championships as the overwhelming favorite to claim his 5th consecutive Wimbledon title and a record-tying 8th overall. The man hasn't lost on center court in nearly 10 years, while the only man in the draw to beat the Joker on grass, Andy Murray, is past his prime. Queen's champion Carlos Alcaraz looks to be the biggest threat in Novak's path to more history, but the 20-year-old has been thrown in the tougher half of the draw, which could prevent him from making the championship Sunday. I'll analyze the draw, go over all the popcorn matches and dangerous floaters before predicting who I think will lift the trophy here on Grand Slam Tennis News Today. Top seed Alcaraz will open against Jeremy Chardy before potentially playing Arthur Rinderknech in the second round, Nicolas Jarry in the third, Alex de Minaur in the fourth, Rune in the quarters, Daniil Medvedev in the semis, and Novak in the finals. As I mentioned in the intro, Carlos does not have the best draw here, as he could face Arthur Rinderknech in round 2, who nearly beat him last week in the Queen's opening round. Hugo Humbert could be a player to watch out for there too, but the Frenchman is probably too inconsistent to wreak a whole lot of havoc there. Looking down, we could see a third round clash of the two Alexes, Zverev and de Minaur. The 15th seed de Minaur should be the favorite on paper, judging from his Queen's final run, but I'm afraid for him that he might fall to Italian Lorenzo Sonego, who faces compatriot and 2021 finalist Matteo Berrettini in the first round. Side note, I don't really expect that much from Matteo, as he has been struggling a lot this season. I will be going with Zverev and Carlitos to meet in the 4th round, and I think the matchup does favor Carlos, so I'm going with him to advance to the quarterfinals. 6th seed Holger Rune is projected to face newly minted top 10 player Frances Tiafoe in the 4th round, but unlike last year, the American has a very tough draw. Yubing Wu is a great player, as that's his first round opponent, and then Grigor Dimitrov has been in excellent form as of late, so the American needs to be careful in that potential 3rd round matchup. On the flip side, Holger's draw looks very good in my opinion. Alejandro Davidovich Fokina in the 3rd round could be a challenge, but I still think the 20-year-old should handle that relatively fine. I hate to snub Francis like this because he is so strong on the grass, as he won that Stuttgart title, but for some reason, I have a feeling that Dimitrov will make life a little bit difficult for him should they play in that 3rd round. I am actually leaning towards the Bulgarian to reach the Elite 8, as I feel like he's been knocking on the door for another Deep Slam run for a minute now. I also still have not seen enough of Holger on grass, and I'm not sure that he'll be that comfortable at SW19, where he has yet to win a match. World number 3 Daniil Medvedev will start against British wildcard Arthur Ferry and could get Adrian Mannarino in the 2nd round, Talon Griekspoor in the 3rd, Tommy Paul in the 4th, Stefano Tsitsipas in the quarterfinal, Carlos Alcaraz in the semifinal, and Nole in the final. This is a decent draw for Daniil, but he is slated to play a couple of solid grass court players in the opening few rounds. Mannarino in round 2 could be pretty tricky, as the Frenchman actually beat Daniil in Schwartz this year, and then plus he reached the Mallorca final today, losing to Eubanks. Griekspoor, meanwhile, is Medvedev's potential 3rd round opponent, and the Dutch player won his home tournament in Schwartz, and he beat Hubie Hurkacz and Halle, so he definitely has a strong grass court pedigree himself. In the bottom portion, Francisco Cerundolo and Tommy Paul are on course to meet again in the 3rd round here at Wimbledon. Francisco actually defeated Tommy in the Eastbourne final today, but I'd pick the American to get revenge there if they do indeed have a rematch. We also have former finalist Milos Raonic back in the draw, the Canadian making his return to slam play in over 2 years. This section could be tricky for Daniil. He has not played that well on the grass this year, as he lost in the opening round in Schwartz and he fell in the quarterfinals of Halle. He does, however, have the advantage of this being best of 5, but I would not be surprised though if he lost early. He does seem to be struggling a bit since Roland Garros. However, I can't deny the fact that he is the most experienced player in this entire section, so because of that, I will bring Medvedev through to the quarterfinals for the first time at SW19. Medvedev's best friend on tour, Stefano Tsitsipas, this section is next to look at, and honestly, it's the most interesting section we have in the entire draw. Up top, home crowd favorite Cam Norrie is projected to play Sepp Korda in the 3rd round. Korda did take down the Brit in the Queen's quarterfinals this year, so Norrie will definitely be looking for revenge there. Korda actually claimed that he's the favorite for the Wimbledon crown coming into the tournament, which is interesting, but the American does know how to perform well in the slams, making the fourth round at SW19 in 2021, plus he reached the AO quarterfinals earlier this year. Norrie meanwhile made the Final Four here last year, but Korda has a 3-1 head-to-head advantage over the Brit, which is why I'd have him moving through that matchup. However, before that potential third rounder, Norrie would have to get by American Chris Eubanks in the second round, who's playing amazing tennis right now, winning his maiden ATP Tour title at the Mallorca Championships today. And then Vesely could be a tough opener for Korda. The Czech player is a solid grass court player himself. Going down, another American, Ben Shelton, will try to win 2 consecutive matches for the first time since reaching the Australian Open quarterfinals. His draws have been tough, but I think this is a great opportunity for him to perhaps make another deep slam run, especially with how grass seems to complement his game so well. Looking further down, two-time champion Andy Murray could play Stefanos Tsitsipas in the second round, but the Greek player would have to get by Dominic Thiem in his opening round match. On paper, this is an intriguing matchup, but unfortunately, Domi is a shell of his former greatness, and he was never that comfortable on grass. However, Tsitsipas isn't in great form himself, going 1-3 in his last 4 matches. People have been saying that Tsitsipas' relationship with Paula Badosa has hurt his game, but I'm going to hold off before saying all that. Now, if he does lose to Thiem, that's when I'll start seriously speculating that something's up. I do think that Murray would beat Steph if they both advance, as Murray is much more comfortable on grass, winning 2 back-to-back challenger titles last month. Really, a lot of players could make it through to the quarterfinals, but if I have to choose one, I'd go with Sebastian Korda, as he seems like the player in the best form here. Now, going to the bottom half, things honestly are far less interesting, which is why I say that the draw is kind of lopsided. Last year's quarterfinalists Jannik Sinner and Taylor Fritz helmed this next section, and it looks pretty mid, to be honest. Jannik would normally be the favorite here, but he's coming into the tournament with an injured adductor, but this is still a decent draw for him still. Miomir Kecmanovic could be tricky in round 2, but he should still get by him, and then the same thing with Dan Evans in the third round. Taylor Fritz also has a solid draw on paper, but his opener against Yannick Hanfmann could be very tricky, as the German is a great grass player and is coming off a semifinal showing in Mallorca. Taylor has lost early in all 3 of his grass lead-up events, and he does not really perform well in the majors. Yoshihito Nishioka, meanwhile, has made the second week at the first 2 slams this season and can possibly go 3 for 3 here. I do not have a lot of faith in Taylor, so I'm going with the safe bet here and having Sinner make another Wimbledon quarterfinal. Norwegian Casper Ruud will start against qualifier Laurent Locoli and could play another Frenchman, Constant Lestienne, in round 2, and then Denis Shapovalov in the third, Bonda-George in the fourth, Sinner in the quarters, Djokovic in the semis, and Alcaraz in the finals. This is definitely the most wide open section in this entire draw. I'm not joking when I say this, but Casper is literally allergic to grass, and he's been seemingly partying and playing golf more than he's been preparing for Wimbledon. He's only won 1 match at SW19, but this is a great opportunity for him to go far. I don't think he will, though, as there are players like Bautista Agut and Shapovalov who have reached the Wimbledon semifinals in the past and are much more comfortable on the surface. Also, Lloyd Harris is an excellent grass player, and he nearly won Mallorca, to be honest, squandering match point opportunities and his semifinal loss to Chris Eubanks. This sounds bad because he is the world number 4 in the 4th seed, but I would be surprised if Ruud made it through to the second week. I say this because I feel like Harris could instead take that spot. Roberto Bautista Agut is my pick to make the Elite 8, though, as George always tends to flop in the slams, and then Shapovalov is still very inconsistent. Plus, the Spaniard has the most experience here out of everyone in this section and is the most solid on the surface overall in the section. Moving on, Andrei Rublev's section is far more interesting, to be honest. The Russian is projected to face last year's runner-up Nick Kyrgios, though I'm not sure the Aussie will even make it that far, as injuries have prevented him from even winning a match all season on tour. He also gets veteran David Goffin in round 1, who made the quarterfinals last year. I'm calling an upset for that one. Looking down, Halle champion Sasha Bublik gets a tough opener himself and Mackie McDonald, who honestly should have been the Eastbourne finalist at least if he hadn't choked that set and 4-1 lead versus Cerundolo in the semifinals. Mackie, though, can take solace in knowing that the non-Federer Halle champions have pretty much all lost in the opening round of Wimbledon in that same year that they lifted the trophy in Germany. Felix Auger-Aliassime is at the bottom there, but unfortunately I'm not expecting much from him as the Canadian is dealing with a knee injury heading into the championships. American JJ Wolf could also shake things up down there, but Andre will be a pretty big favorite in my eyes to move through. Yes, he did lose to Bublik in the Halle final, but I don't know if the Kazakh will be able to keep that same focus and intensity he had in Germany throughout this slam. Novak Djokovic will start his title defense against Pedro Cachin before potentially meeting Brandon Nakashima in the second round, followed by Thomas Martin Echeverry in the third, Lorenzo Musetti in the round of 16, Rublev in the quarters, Ruud in the semis, and Carlitos in the final. Novak's section looks solid for him. He could play Brandon Nakashima, as I mentioned in the second round, who made the second week last year. Nakashima is a very talented young player, and Nole actually practiced with him this week, so I think that that'll play more into the Serbians' advantage. Stan the Man is the potential third-round opponent, though the Swissman has a challenging opener against Finland's Emir Wuzurari, who upset Sinner 2 weeks ago in the Netherlands. Up top, Lorenzo Musetti and QB Hurkacz are set to meet in the third round. I'll send Musetti through that hypothetical matchup because even though Hurkacz has historically been the better grass court player, the Italian has impressed me more with his quarterfinal showings in Stuttgart and Queens. Former semifinalist Isner is the potential second round opponent, but the American is far past his prime and he hasn't won a match since February, so Musetti should be fine, and I'm sending him through to face Novak in that second week. Now, should Novak and Lorenzo face off, I could possibly see the 14th seed grabbing a set, especially if the Serbian is off his game. However, Djokovic lost to the Italian the last time they played a few months ago in Monte Carlo, and he'll definitely be gunning for revenge. Not a surprise, I'm putting Novak into the quarterfinals. For my predictions, I have Alcaraz and Korda in the semifinals, as well as Roberto Bautista Agut and Novak Djokovic. Then in the championship, I have Seb taking on Novak, with the Serbian winning it all. First, kind of going back over the draw and explaining my picks a little bit further. Starting up top, I think Carlitos needs to be aware of Sasha Zverev, perhaps sneaking in and elevating his level. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if he made it through that section, even though, as I mentioned earlier, the matchup tends to favor Carlitos. I did snub Francis Tiafoe and Holger Rune, and they of course could come through and perhaps take down Alcaraz in that quarterfinal. And I was going to have Alcaraz meet Novak in the final, but even though he looked good in that Queens tournament, I'm not 100% sold on his SW19 prospects and his overall grass court capabilities. Putting Dimitrov into the quarterfinals honestly might blow up in my face, but for some reason I do feel like Grigor is long overdue for a deep slam run. He's been knocking on the door, been playing solid tennis, making the second week of Roland Garros, and he played a solid match against Alcaraz in the quarterfinals of Queens. And funny enough, I actually was this close to having him move through to those semifinals, but I just think that Alcaraz's game will be too much for him, especially best of 5. I am not that confident about Daniil going deep, especially because I'm not as convinced about his grass court pedigree, but I'll stick beside him, even though I could see Greek Sport, Paul, or even Manarino potentially scalping him. Now, about Korda, I know that pick might be, controversial to some, but I just have an inkling that he'll do something crazy this tournament. By crazy, he could obviously fall in the opening round to Yuri Vesely. I don't know. I mean, he already prepared us with that Wimbledon favorite comment, and I could definitely see him backing it up. I don't feel any remorse at all for having Stefanos lose early, same with Fritz and Ruud, because they've literally given me nothing. If he does play the match of his life, Rublev could perhaps, tug on Djokovic's chakras and all, but that's a big if at this stage, literally, as Andre has never won a slam quarterfinal. Sinner might be perceived as the snub too, as, I'm sure a lot of people would have him in the semifinal, especially over Roberto Bautista Agut, but maybe if I don't give him the attention, he'll actually live up to the hype and, go deep this tournament. Lastly, I don't really feel like I need to explain much for why I have Novak winning this title. He's the best grass court player in the world, the best Grand Slam player in the world, and above all, he's pretty much the greatest player of all time. The best slam player in the world point is especially important here because it makes Nole so tough to beat in the majors. He literally has not lost a slam match since the 2022 French Open, which is just asinine when you think about it. It takes so much to beat Djokovic in best of 5 because because he is so mentally sound. Even if you get a 2-6-love lead over him, he's still the favorite to win the match, which is insane. There is the possibility of nerves creeping up as Djokovic continues his mission to cement himself as the undisputed GOAT, with the calendar slam dream also still on the horizon. But we all know that Nole thrives in the pressure situations. Thus, I see him lifting his 24th Grand Slam title 2 weeks from today. That's all for my Wimbledon men's preview, and let me know in the comments if you agree with my picks and my predictions. Also, make sure you subscribe and click the notification bell so you're notified whenever I post my day-by-day updates of all the action in London. Thanks for watching. I'm Christian Bastnight, and I'll see y'all next time here on Grand Slam Tennis News Today.